Howdy howdy! This video is about a quilt that I made. Actually, it hasn't been made completely done yet because English is my first language and I excel at it. I spent all of January on it. I spent a good portion of December cutting and trying to make some sense of it. It is from a magazine which I could pull out and show it to you, but I'm not going to. Now, you might be thinking that it must be a good pattern, that they had to print it and circulate it. I don't disagree with that. All that I got was how many pieces to cut, which fabrics to use, the size it should be, so pretty much just basic dimensions, a diagram, a few photos, and a couple of tips. That's about it. So I had to figure out how to do all of this. I am bound and determined not to sew any new blocks though, but I have a bunch of leftover pieces and I'm not entirely sure why, and it's not like a small amount, it's a ridiculous amount. It's probably at least 100. This one's called the County Fair. I will put some information on the screen about who designed it. I hesitate on giving any information on like measurements because you should buy the pattern. But I don't even know if you can buy the pattern. I haven't looked into it, if it's available online or not. The magazine was printed at least 5 years ago, and originally it was supposed to be red and blue and white, which makes sense if you live in the States. It's very like patriotic for the American. I did not video everything because I figured I would end up with way too much footage and this video would be 12 minutes and 36 seconds long, and that's just a little too much for a quilt that I really don't care to do again. Today I really wanted to put this all together into rows, and you will see that momentarily. Some of the blocks were really difficult to determine how to make because I just had diagrams to look at. I did figure out how to do it in the end, and they're not difficult to make. This is probably the hardest block, the pinwheel. This is probably the second hardest block, and then the stars. Stars are easy, because everybody knows how to do them. This was the easiest one, if you can believe that. This wasn't too difficult, but like if you have a tendency to stretch when you sew or cut on the bias, then yeah, you're probably going to struggle with this. That's what this quilt is. It was completely part of my plan to clip corners and points. Look at that. That is absolutely what I was going for. This is why I picked this pattern, so that I would have no sharp points. I struggle a little bit with the clipping of points on my poor quilt, because I mentioned before the blocks are different sizes. That's really important when you're trying to sew together a quilt top. Unfortunately, I'm just having a bunch of clipped points. I did my best with pressing techniques to try to make it less noticeable. Some of the seams I pressed open, some of them I pressed to the side. There's really no rhyme or reason to what I did. I think I did pretty good considering I have no idea what I'm up to. I'm going to continue on this quilt. I have one seam left to make if I do it correctly. If I don't, I have probably 2 or 3. But that's okay. I just have to make sure that the top 4 rows, the top 4 rows, and the bottom 5 rows are all the same width, and if they're not, I have to add a piece to one of them. Alrighty, this is the last seam. I did some trimming. I am very anti-trimming. So much so, this quilt's so messed up. But you know what? We're gonna give her a go. And then here I am sewing it all together. This was a very exciting part, to see everything come together and to try and not freak out about how messy the back of the flimsy looked. In this section here, I'm going to be basting my quilt. You'll be noticing that I'm cutting out extra batting for the quilt, because whatever I don't use in this one, I will be attaching to batting that is not large enough for my king size quilt. We are powering through. I also realized how much I hate wearing this sweater because it's so big. I used to wear these sweaters in high school, mostly grade 12, because I was like really self-conscious, and I was like, I'll just wear big sweaters and blankets and coats and stuff. People will never be able to criticize because they'll never know what I actually look like. Great strategy, but now any of the photos I see from back then I really hate a lot. Looked like I was struggling, and I was. Yeah, that's me basting. I used I believe it is a double-sized single sheet, a very high thread count, and I think it's Egyptian cotton. I'm not sure. I sound very congested while I'm laying on the floor because I think my uvula is touching the back of my throat. Anyway, that's that. Neat. See, with having this foot pedal, it doesn't like burn my foot up so I can quilt for hours on end, unlike the other one, which was like literally 3rd-degree burns. The only thing is, I'm like way too fast, way too slow. I stall the machine. This next part is my favorite, which is trimming. I love trimming quilts. So satisfying. Even though it's the scariest part because you find out how many mistakes you've made. I like this quilt. I do. I don't think I'm gonna put it on my bed though, because I'm gonna show you why. If we were to count how many quilts I have on my bed right now, we would have to add this one, which is soon to not be on my bed. This is the spicy, icy sawtooth that I did a year ago. Actually, that was my project about a year ago for my grandmother. She had lung cancer. Now I have another family member who has some pretty severe terminal illness, who wants to have that quilt. So he's gonna get it, which is good. Here's one quilt. Here's my emotional support sheet so I don't roll my head into the corner while I sleep. I finished it. My Oma made it, the top. I finished it last year, and then I just did like a really quick hack sew quilt. But I bound it with the machine, as you can see, and it doesn't look too good, but since it's on my bed, it doesn't matter. And then this quilt, I think my mom paid like $100 for it, which is an absolute ripoff now that I know what goes into quilts. The last quilt I have here is my homespun, which I did last year after I finished the spicy icy. And you can see it. I had it on my bed during the summer. Very nice. Very nice. So this next part is binding my quilt. I used leftover binding strips, sewed them all together, and then I sewed it to the back side, flipped it over, used a special stitch for part of it, and then went to a regular stitch and sewed it on the front. And then here I am outside, giving you a little look. Little preview. This was not a good angle, but I was having fun. And then I'm going to admire the quilt myself, because I think that's the intended audience. New recording. That hurt. That really hurt, actually. Hi. This is one fabulous quilt. I don't have a name for it other than the pattern name, which is the county fair, which I've probably mentioned before. And I know my sunglasses are on top of my toque, and it's actually like 7 degrees outside, so I'm wildly overdressed, but this is she. Little, I can only think of that, can we have a moment for the dress? Woo! And then the back of the dress. Woo! It's not completely done. There's a little thread down here. A little bit distorted when on the line. She was finished yesterday. She needs a wash, and then she'll be ready to go. Yesterday was Sunday. Today's Family Day here in Ontario. It's a provincial thing. We got mail today. I'm going to show you why that's important in a minute. I'm always a little bit disappointed when I finish the projects because I know exactly the mistakes I made and how I can do better in the future. And this quilt was no exception. I did not realize until I went to put the binding on that the tension was all messed up while I was quilting. The bottom bobbin tension, there was none. Looking a little bit loose. I don't know if that's going to be a structural problem. I also had my very first pucker. I don't think I've ever puckered on a quilt before when quilting on the back, and I have at least 2 notable ones. I did not pull them out because I did not care. She was a labor of love. There's quite a bit of open space still. I think there's about 8 inches. I think you're supposed to do a little bit more dense than that, but I kind of gave up. I'm just really proud of myself for maneuvering my machine the way I did. I don't use a walking foot when I quilt, which is like one of the 7 deadly sins. So this is less about the quilt and more about a package I finally got. There's an occupation in Ottawa. There's been a lot of white nationalism. I've unfollowed probably close to 80 people on Instagram, most of which I went to high school with or church. I got a t-shirt in the mail I ordered 2-3 weeks ago, something like that, from Boring Friends. So I finally got the t-shirt in the mail. I think it shipped out about a week ago. I thought I was gonna get it last week Thursday. We didn't get mail service both Thursday and Friday, so my package was sitting in town at the mail distribution center. I'm just a little bit nervous. I see this truck coming up the hill with a livestock trailer, and I have a feeling I know who that person is. Okay, we're all good. I ordered a medium. I got a medium. I didn't know what the size chart would be. I'm very happy with it. And all of the proceeds of the purchase for this shirt, and I think a bunch of the other stuff on the website, went to Shepherds of Good Hope in Ottawa. I think that's the organization. That was a soup kitchen that got raided. I gotta signal my virtue every once in a while. This is the front of the dress. And this is the back. Thanks for watching. I don't know if I'm gonna have another conclusion behind this. It's almost dinner time. We're having cabbage rolls. I will see you in the next video, whatever that might be. I have a few ideas of non-quilty stuff. This is my channel, so you never know what you're gonna get.